Hey guys, welcome to the Son of Wonder. Bad Batch Season 2 is kicked off and we got the first 2 episodes at once. So let's conversationalize. What's up guys? So we are kicking off the new year 2023 with our first project, I guess you could call it, Bad Batch Season 2. I have been very excited for this second season to this show. I really liked the first season, and the trailer for the second season looked really awesome. All sorts of cool little details, so really excited to see how it's going to come together in this season. And I think these first 2 episodes, I don't know if they started off as strong as the first season did with its first, I guess, longer episode. But these first 2 episodes still were very good. And I enjoyed like one of the lessons that they taught also in these first 2 episodes. They didn't give you too much. Like you don't start off with Crosshair. You don't start off with Cody. I know Gunji was in the trailer with his lightsaber. You don't start off with that. You just start off with one of the Bad Batch's simple missions. Them going to some beach planet and being attacked by these space crabs. Which is exactly the kind of antics that you would expect them to get into in this part of their lives after they've had to be on the run from the Empire, you know, scrounging around trying to find jobs to do for Sid, you know, just to get money. And they do this job for her, and again, even as you get with their first mission, when they're trying to steal the things from the crabs, you see Omega, how she's grown as a character and like her skill level. Like she's studying all sorts of ships and how they're working, and she's become a lot better of a combatant and a lot more agile and just like jumping around, shooting crabs with her arrows, cool Star Wars bow and arrow thing. And I like her redesign. Like she's got armor now too, so she's more protected. And I like how the Bad Batch are letting her come on missions, and you no longer have that conflict of, well, should Omega stay or should Omega just go with us? I don't know. I feel like she's safer with her, you know, back at the ship and all that stuff. I feel like it's good to just get over that hump so we can go on to the next part of our story. And that's exactly what they did. I really wanted this season to start off, just get right into it. Just get right into the stuff of them going on a mission, finding something cool, doing something cool together as the Bad Batch. Because that's part of what makes this group so endearing, is because they are a group. They have that group dynamic. You have each individual, you know, cog in the machine to make it work, and their camaraderie with each other also is something, you know, it's really cool to see, especially with Omega added as the child, very similar to how Ezra was added in with the Ghost Crew in Rebels. Similar kind of the way that like the small child ends up coming together with this band of marauders, you know, who all also have their own differences. And their different, you know, viewpoints on the way life works and the way the galaxy works, and so just cool to see. And I like that they're, you know, just sticking with that. Also, they get a new mission from Sid, which is very important for the first 2 episodes of the story. This is what the first 2 episodes revolve around. Is they're tasked with going to Sereno, the home planet of Count Dooku, to plunder some of his riches, so they'll never have to work for Sid again and can just disappear. Because Hunter really wants to give Omega a life that's outside of, you know, fighting this monster and going to retrieve this thing for these credits. Like, he really wants to give her a life outside of that, like a life that he feels a child deserves, like especially a child like her. Because you can really tell Hunter's love for Omega in all of these episodes in season 1. And, you know, in season 2, his protectiveness of her, but he's learned how to not be as overprotective. So, again, those character development is great in this series, and we're getting more and more of it because another one of the things I love is that Echo has become very determined. Like, he's been around longer than any of these characters, like, by far. He started out, like, in 2008 when Clone Wars first started. So his first appearance was in the episode called Rookies, where he's with a bunch of clones stranded on this station that has been overrun by the Separatists. And he, you know, at first he's like a little timid because he is a rookie, because he only just started out as a clone and he hasn't been taught all the ropes yet. But then he got under Captain Rex's tutelage, he got under Commander Cody's tutelage, and through learning from them, and learning from the Jedi, learning from Anakin, and learning from Obi-Wan, Echo has truly become a more mature soldier, and a soldier in the truest sense of the word. Like, he's willing to fight for whatever he needs to fight for if he believes it's the right thing. And you really see that in these episodes because of his determination to, like, he's trying to convince Hunter, like, Hunter, we don't need to disappear. That is not our goal right now. We have to help where we can in the galaxy because the Empire is pressing down hard on everyone in the galaxy. And they're spreading out like wildfire, and we need to stop them now, or at least just do what we can. And I love that determination of Echo. I love his character development, his journey, that even though he was captured and turned into a cyborg, lost half of his body, he still has twice the determination. And I love it, man. It's so good. It's such good writing and story progression for the character of Echo. But Omega overhears this conversation that Echo has with Hunter, and Echo in the conversation mentions that if they hadn't have chosen to take Omega from Kamino, they would not be in the situation they're in right now, having to, go to get credits for Sid and get this for Sid and all these different things. But Echo was saying that as a way of telling Hunter that if they had not chosen to take Omega, they would be serving the Empire. But it was because of Omega that they ran away from the Empire and decided to make their own choices to try and stop the Empire from being oppressive and from spreading their evil throughout the galaxy. And so Echo was using that as a compliment to the situation that Omega helped cause. But Omega overheard this and thought, she thought to herself, from the little that she heard, that Echo was saying that she was responsible for all the bad stuff that's happening with the Bad Batch and the fact that they're having to do this and do that. And I love that they're still choosing to make Omega a vulnerable character. One of the things that's been a consistent problem with especially female characters these days is that they're being turned into like these characters who have everything figured out already. They don't really learn anything from anyone. They just can do whatever they want and, do all the things they need to do to win without any struggle, without any learning, without having to come to grips with this and have victory over that. And it's just really frustrating when you have a character who is competent all the time, no matter what. But with Omega, they have not written her this way. With Omega, they have given her several vulnerabilities. They have allowed her to be the daughter of Hunter and the rest of the Bad Batch crew, as well as the Bad Batch learning from Omega and some of the stuff that she's done and the cleverness that she's exhibited. And so you have them, feeding off of each other in terms of the lessons they're learning from each other, and they're growing together. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see in a world that is filled with so many projects that unfortunately do not showcase those types of touching things. So I love that about her character. I love that about the Hunter and Echoes and all the Bad Batch's characters and the way that dichotomy works. But when they first get to Sereno, you get all the Bad Batch isms. Omega makes a comment to Wrecker about stealth because Wrecker just wants to destroy everything and just go in guns blazing. And I mean, it's all of what you'd expect from a Star Wars heist, from the Bad Batch trying to steal something. And I guess at a certain point it does start to get a little predictable. Like, there is a formula for the Star Wars heist, but I'm okay with the formula. I've learned to appreciate formulas if they work, especially after seeing things like Andor and things like She-Hulk, which went completely against the formula. I appreciate formulas so much more now, so I guess that's the only thing I owe to those shows. Bottom line, Omega, Echo, and Tech get separated from Wrecker and Hunter. And I feel like one of my criticisms of these episodes is that it was a little bit of wasted potential, because I was really hoping when they said that they were going to explore the castle at Sereno, Dooku's lair, essentially, that was featured in Clone Wars heavily. That's where he fought, unbeknownst to him, but that's where he fought Ventress and the Night Sisters when they came to assassinate him in the Clone Wars at that big lightsaber duel. I mean, that's so much stuff, cool stuff happened there. You see Dooku talking to Palpatine several times in that chamber that Hunter and Wrecker were in Clone Wars. So it was just really cool to see, and I was hoping that lift that they found, that they like Wrecker stomped on to get him to go down and escape the clone troopers, I was hoping that would lead to this underground catacombs that was never explored in the Clone Wars, like that led to some Force antiques or artifacts. I was really hoping that we would find that kind of thing, because I figured that Dooku, being as wealthy as he was, but also being a Sith Lord and a former Jedi at that, would have these ancient Force artifacts that nobody knew he had, and all these mysterious items or whatnot. But it ended up just being leaned into a hangar, and they escaped through the ruined city, which that's fine. I just wish they would have explored that a little bit more. That's not to say they didn't do anything interesting with the Sereno plotline in the story. They definitely did, because one, I wasn't really fully, I guess I was aware, and I wasn't aware that there wasn't even a city, because all you ever saw of Sereno in the Clone Wars was Dooku at the castle, and that was it. You never really knew about a city. But there was a city, and apparently it was bombarded by the Empire, just like Kamino was at the end of Bad Batch Season 1. And I find that very interesting, because Sereno really would have no reason to be bombarded, at least not in my mind. I feel like this only shows the cruelty of the Empire, and that they just destroyed, bombarded all the planets who were previously involved in the Clone Wars, maybe as a means of forgetting the Clone Wars completely. As a way of forcing the galaxy to disregard all the things that happened in the Clone Wars, and anyone who would try to speak out against the Empire or reveal that the Empire was being planned from the beginning, if they knew, or if they picked up on it, that was their way of just wiping the slate clean and starting over with the Empire. That way everybody would be brainwashed into thinking, just the Empire rules the galaxy, and just that's the way things are. And I can't think anything different because I'm brainwashed. That is my reasoning of why they would bombard Sereno and all these other planets who weren't directly a threat to the Empire, but probably were a threat in terms of their knowledge of the pre-existing events. Meanwhile, Tech is injured from Echo, Tech, and Omega crash landing on the upper regions of the planet of Sereno in a container that they had stolen from the shipping containers. They were trying to steal all the valuable stuff that Dooku had. They call it the War Chest, which again I thought would have some cool artifacts in there, maybe like a lightsaber or something. I thought they were going to stumble upon, but it ended up just being some diamonds and some rubies. And they escape the chest, but Echo's leg is fractured. And they come across this guy named Romar, who has a shelter a bit of ways away, and they stay at that. And during this time, you get a little bit more of a sense of what happened to people of Sereno, which again is a cool perspective, because you never really got that at all from the Clone Wars. The people of Sereno's point of view on Dooku and what Dooku was doing. And you realize that Dooku, as many would probably already assume, was stealing from not just all the other planets, but he was taking advantage of his own planet. He was stealing all sorts of valuables from his own people just to fund his cruel operations. And that makes perfect sense, because, it's funny that Tales of the Jedi reveals so much about Dooku's character, and even in Bad Batch we're kind of getting a little bit more about him, just how evil he was and how much of a shift it was from light to dark, and how drastic it was. And there's an interesting line when Romar is talking to Tech, when Romar reveals that he has a data server, and Tech says he can fix it, but he calls it a separatist data server, and then Romar corrects him and says a Serenian data server. And Tech was like, well, I never really thought about it like that before. Because Romar had said, the Sereno was around before the Separatists were around. And I think that's interesting, because it goes to show more and more that everyone was a victim of Palpatine. Even the people in the Separatists who were Separatists, the senators who had seceded from the Republic, were just as much of victims as the Republic themselves. The clones, the Separatist senators, the peoples of the planets that the Separatists ran, the senators of those planets represented, all of them were just victims. I guess even the droids, to a certain extent, were victims of Palpatine's cruelty. And they were all ended up being on the same side, because Palpatine was against everyone. but nobody knew that. And I just think that's, the more they're revealing about that, the more stones they're overturning. I think it's just interesting to figure these things out. Also, Romar gives Omega like a toy, like one of those things that you look through that you see all those cool patterns. And he's like, a toy is something that makes you happy, which is far more valuable than anything a ruby can do for you. And I think that's true. I think it's probably more like having joy is better than anything a ruby or wealth can give you. I think it's the kind of the message they're going for there, but they said happy and happiness and joy are not the same thing. But I get what they're going for there, and I appreciate it. But in the end, Omega just still decides to go to that crashed war chest and try to get some of the valuables from it against Echo's wishes, and Echo follows her and tries to save her, while Wrecker and Hunter are in the ruined city running from the clones and trying to fend them off. And Wrecker creates out of these parts from these separatist tanks. And I really enjoyed it because they gave Wrecker's always the dumb guy, right? He's always the dumb, big, bulky dude. He's like the classic stereotype. But I liked that they actually, in the second episode, gave him something to do, like a plan. Like he had his own plan. That he could use these parts from this and these parts from that and put them together, and he made his own like tank gun. And the first thing he did was shoot a fighter that was coming at them, about to destroy them. That's awesome. Those are moments for me that are like the get up and cheer moments. It's like, they actually showed that he had intelligence. So he's like, hey, I can make this and use that. Like he's not just the big, strong guy. Like he's smart too. And I just like that you can show a little bit of those attributes to give each character more integrity. One thing that did confuse me a little bit was how fast Tech was able to get to where Omega and Echo were at the war chest when his leg was fractured. I didn't really understand that because I thought that Romar's shelter was a bit of a ways away, but I guess he just found some pep in his step. But bottom line, Romar saves pretty much all of them, and they all escape together except Romar. Romar decides to stay. But the Bad Batch escape together on the Marauder, and they're all alive and safe, which is always nice. But I think the main highlight from these episodes was the moment where Echo taught Omega a lesson in his desire to save her. Omega is wanting to reach for the rubies that had fallen from her hand when she was trying to climb up out of the war chest, and they're stuck in the war chest. The war chest is about to fall off this cliff. And Echo's just talking to her. He's like, Omega, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Let it go. And Omega's like, I know that you believe that you're in all this mess because of me, but I want to make it right. I want to get you guys these valuables so we can just disappear and have a normal life. And Echo's like, no, it's not worth it. Let it go. And this scene no pun intended, very much echoed for me the scene in The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade, when Indy, his girlfriend had just fallen to her death. And he's reaching for the Holy Grail. And he's looking at his dad, Sean Connery's character. He's like, I can reach it, Dad, I can reach it. And Sean Connery's like, Indy, let it go. And he does, and they both escape. And that was, I don't know, I know Dave Filoni respects older movies, especially movies that George Lucas had to do with, which he did for the Indiana Jones movies. I know he respects those movies a lot, and I do wonder if he wasn't trying to echo to that movie. But I get the same vibes from this moment as I do from that moment in Last Crusade. It's that lesson of, something we want to hold on to so bad, something that we know will give us happiness, or we know will give us freedom or peace. We just know it, right? We know it. But someone wiser than us, someone who's been through more life than us, and who loves us, who genuinely loves us, can just reach out his hand and say, no, let it go, come back to me. I just find that very touching, especially the moment that Echo has with Omega later at the end of the episode, when Echo admits to Omega that, I wouldn't change a thing. Because if we hadn't decided to take you from Kamino, we might be serving the Empire right now. But it's because of you that we're not. It's because of you that we're here and that we're going to do good for the galaxy. And I would do it all over again. Single tear. And I would like to be clear, that moment by itself gave me 1,000 times more emotions than Andor ever hoped to. And I know I crap on Andor a lot, but nothing about it worked. And I think this series and these 2 episodes by themselves just show everything that Andor didn't do right and everything that Dave Filoni is so good at doing, which is bringing such big emotions from these characters and writing such great story development, character development. Also interesting, and he always packs that emotion into it. He always packs that single tear moment of like, I love you, Hunter, or I love you, Echo, or I love you, whoever's making me cry right now. But another interesting thing, Romar's character, they don't reveal a lot about him. All they really say is that he's a survivor and that he's just been surviving outside the city ever since it was destroyed, because he and apparently a bunch of other Serenians escaped the city before it was bombarded. And so I have a theory about him because he was so disliking of Dooku, and he seemed to like hold almost a personal grudge against him. Like, I guess anyone would. Like, if you're the leader of this planet and you're taking advantage of your own people, you would have a grudge against them. But he kind of looked like Dooku in the way they animated him, and he was an older man, very much an older man too. And I wondered that if he might not be possibly the brother of Count Dooku. I know that in Legends, as well as maybe a canon novel, I'm not quite sure that he does have siblings, but I don't exactly remember who. But I thought in Legends he did have a brother, and I wondered if they weren't trying to reinvent this brother in this series, which I think would be very interesting if they chose to do so. But the last crazy thing that happened in this episode or in these episodes, was the Admiral from the previous season, Admiral Rampart, shows up. And the clone who's been chasing the Bad Batch this whole time, like, pretty determined clone. Like, he's not one of these stupid henchman clones, you know, that like just like, oh, do this or oh, do that. Like, he seemed like well thought out and precise about his tactics and what he was doing to try to stop the Bad Batch from stealing their stuff. But Admiral Rampart comes back, and just to be clear, I hate this character. He stinks. I hate him in the way I'm supposed to hate him. Not like I hated certain characters in Andor, but like Rampart is a character who's supposed to make you mad, and he really makes me mad. But he came to Sereno just to tell this clone captain or whatever that, oh no, you're mistaken. There's no way Bad Batch survived. I killed them on Kamino. They're dead. And the clone's like, no, they're alive. I saw them. I saw at least 2 of them. They're definitely alive. And Rampart says, well, you know, if I have to make a report that says I was wrong and that I failed on Kamino and that the Bad Batch is not dead to Tarkin, that's not going to go well for me. So you're going to have to falsify a report. And the clone refuses to. Like, I cannot falsify an official report. Like, I can't lie to my superiors. And it shows, again, like, the clones, even though they were mind-controlled and they were, like, brought down a few pegs because of Order 66, they were still cognizant and had enough of a conscience to where even they can be like, I don't know if I should do that. That's not following orders, because they're programmed to follow orders. They have a very strict sense of law and order. And if you're an Imperial and you're going against that for your own wishes, your own selfish gain, then they're not going to like that very much. And I have a feeling that's where the rest of this season is going down, because if they hinted at that with this clone, this one random clone, they're going to do that with other more important clones later on. But anyway, General Rampart kills him on the spot. He's like, oh, I see. Bam. Shoots him off the balcony. Plummets to his death. Which, again, shows how brutal and horrible this character is. Shows the corruption of the Empire. And I like that it wasn't one of those episodes that ended with like oh, I have something to tell you. It's the Bad Batch. They're the ones who tried to attack us, and now we're just going to do this all over again. No, it was something a lot more interesting. Like, now we have Rampart between a rock and a hard place. Like, he just killed a clone officer for not wanting to falsify a report that shows his incompetence, Admiral Rampart's incompetence. But his incompetence will be found out later on, because Tarkin always finds out. He's like Baskin Robbins, because Baskin Robbins always finds out. So Rampart's kind of stuck. Like, he cannot openly say, oh, I'm going to go hunt down the Bad Batch now, because if he does, that directly states that he completely failed his mission in the previous season and hunting them down and destroying them. Because he thinks he did, because, you know, the Bad Batch, to everybody else, to the Empire especially, the Bad Batch is dead. But now Rampart realizes that, oh, this might have been a mistake. I might have failed. And I need to cover my butt. Very interesting thing to do with his character. And it goes completely in line with his character because he is a selfish jerk. But that is my review of the first 2 episodes of Bad Batch. Real quick, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a Superman shirt, it's because I don't have enough Star Wars ones. I will try to remedy that in the future. But thank you guys for watching. I'm very much looking forward to the future episodes. These first 2 really hooked me, and they just brought back all those emotions that I loved about the first season. So I'm excited to see what more emotions I can, you know, get from these characters and what more lessons can be learned by Omega and by the Bad Batch and for them both. And I love the dichotomy. I love the dynamics. So looking forward to seeing what they have next. So thank you guys for watching. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. That's a wrap.